Hey Andrea, hope you're good. Thank you for sending everything over. Hope you're having a good weekend, relatively chill. I know you're busy at the minute. Um, okay, this week as a whole, again, really good. Really good. Really happy with it. Boxes just being ticked consistently, right? Weight measurements held. Um, which, this is going to be about the biggest topic of conversation in this check-in, right? Because I think it kind of relates into calories, and I think what our biggest worry is, or what we need to get our head around, is the fact that weight will creep. Well, should be, creeping up as time goes on, right? I think that's probably what we have to get our head around. And it's just like we can definitely do it, and and it's just another challenge. It's just another mindset challenge. When we started out, we were reluctant to even increase food in itself. We got our head around that. We were reluctant to increase carbs. We got our head around that. So it's just another challenge, of which there will be more and more and more as time goes on, right? So it's just something that we've got to get our head around, and we've just got to almost come to the acceptance that if we're wanting to add muscle mass, weight will increase over time, right? You just have to accept that. Now, obviously, we want to do it in a controlled fashion. We don't want it to be rapid, because if it's rapid, then we're probably adding body fat a little bit too quick. But when we look at our measurements, our weight really isn't shifting too much. Now, that's not necessarily a bad sign, right? Because we have gone through a fat loss phase. First, we were dropping a bit of weight. We'll drop quite a bit of weight, actually. And then going into a mass gain phase, even though weight's sort of maintained, seeing progressions in the gym and stuff, we've definitely, without a doubt, likely added muscle mass. But as time goes on, you do want to see this weight creeping up, right? Because that's a good sign. If you're gaining weight, then that weight's coming from somewhere. Yes, it will be body fat, some of it. But if our weight's not creeping up, then chances are eventually, if it's long term, we're probably not adding muscle mass, or anywhere near the significant amount we're looking for, if weight isn't shifting, right? So I'll just quickly skip to this question down here because it kind of answers that. How much weight do you think I'm going to put on? First and foremost, I don't know, when it comes to adding muscle mass, the best way to go about it, in all honesty, is to almost wing it. Right, because when we gain weight at a slow rate and we're adding muscle mass, yes, accumulation will come with it. So, is it going to be more muscle weight than fat? So, when you gain weight, it will be more fat than muscle, right? Or like in terms of over time, right? Only because your body gains fat a lot easier and quicker than it does muscle mass. Gaining muscle mass just takes time, which is why we want the rate of gain to be slow. But the weight that you're gaining will still be more fat than muscle. It's going to be impossible to get it the other way around, okay? Having said that, though, you don't want that to then put you off or scare you, because the rate of gain is still going to be slow. So it's not like you're still going to be gaining a lot of body fat, okay? And what you do is, where you're talking about here, at what point do you decide reducing calories? What you do is you basically, take progress pictures. You basically have a look at how you're looking. And when you get to the point where you're uncomfortable with the amount of body fat that you've gained, or other signs start cropping up, you just start to feel maybe a little bit unhealthier, you maybe notice health markers dropping a little bit, training long term maybe starting to suffer a little bit, stuff like that, then you can maybe, okay, now we need to go back into a fat loss phase. But that's just the process of gaining muscle mass. That's why people go through gaining phases, fat loss phases, gaining phases, fat loss phases, because the accumulation of body fat is inevitable, right? So we kind of got to get a head around that, because, to a degree, when it comes to gaining muscle mass, you have to be a little bit aggressive, right? And part of that is being with food to a degree, right? Because the other way you can look at it is, if you wanted to take it as slow as possible, then you just have to, have the acceptance that gaining muscle is going to take longer than it would if you'd been a little bit more aggressive, right? And the fact that gaining muscle is already a long process, it would just be then a very, very long process. So you know, I think that's what we need to get our head around right now, is that weight over time is going to want to increase. And again, it's not going to be like a pound a week, it's not going to be quick. We're talking maybe like 1 to 2 pounds a month sort of thing, that sort of weight gain. So, even after like 6 months or something, it might only be a 6 to 12 pound gain, which might sound like a lot, but in reality, when some of that is going to be muscle, it's not that much, right? When you're talking about deloads is just when you've got an accumulation of stress and you need to pull back a little bit before you go again. So that wouldn't be to do with body fat. That would be to do with training, stalling and struggling to progress. That would be to do with sleep, taking a hit, recovery, not recovering as well. So the sort of things you've spoken about there, that's more like deload. That's like short term. Fat loss is just to do with our condition, basically. Hope that makes sense, right? But the best way to look at food is, right now I think we're seeing food as calories. Right? When you're talking about when I go over 2,000, I'm thinking about jumping on the treadmill, right? You're thinking of it as calories. So you're thinking, well, I'm taking in more calories, so I need to burn more calories. That's not necessarily what we want to do in a muscle gaining phase, right? In a muscle gaining phase, the food that we're taking in is there to improve performance and improve recovery. If we're improving performance and improving recovery as best as we can, that is going to go a long way to adding muscle mass, right? So try not to think of it as calories in, calories out sort of thing, where this energy balance. Doing cardio during a fat loss, muscle gain phase isn't the end of the world, because it helps sort of keep health relatively good, but your step counts through the roof anyway. So I wouldn't advise doing any more cardio. So here we're inducing some cardio with big effect on weight on train, build muscle. I wouldn't add any for you because steps are already high. If you just if you're just talking about generally from individual to individual, it's individual dependent. Keeping up fitness levels and aerobic levels can have some benefit in a mass gain phase, yes. Doing too much might just eat up into the calories that you're taking in, and then it might be a bit counterproductive. So it's a bit of a 50-50 one. It comes down to the individual, but for you, I don't think it's necessary, right? Also, with protein, as you take calories up, your protein will increase. Don't stress about it going over the target. It's not the end of the world. It's absolutely fine. So if protein does go above 125, don't stress it. It's fine. I've just put that target in there because I want to make sure we hit it. If it goes over, don't stress it, okay? It will likely go over as you take calories up because protein, even in small amounts, is literally in every food. So it will accumulate. So don't stress it, right? But I think that's what we need to get our head around. Just, and it might take a little bit of time. If I was you, maybe just have one day where you go over 2,000, and then the next day maybe you come under 2,000. The day after you go over it again, and just sort of get used to it, right? Again, if you are worried about, weight gain and we need to get our head around that and accept that it will happen over time, just look at the data, look at the numbers. We've hardly, weight's hardly risen so far, and we've been hitting like 1.9 for the last, few weeks. So going up to 2,000, even 2.1, it's not a huge increase. So it's not like we hit that and weight's going to jump up to like 128 or 129 or something. If anything, you're going to get like an extra pound the first week, and then that'll probably hold off for a couple of weeks, and you might get an extra pound. So it will still be slow, right? We're talking about small increases in calories, okay? But just think of it as what those calories are doing to the goal, rather than thinking of it as calories in versus calories out, or, trying to match in expenditure what we're doing in taking in, because it's not about that. We're trying to create a small surplus because that is going to be the optimal place for adding muscle mass, right? We've got to think what's best for our goal. Yeah, and that might take a little bit of time to get our head around. But again, it's just another challenge that we will be able to get our head around. And we've got to challenge those thought processes that we're getting that are countering that. Sleep good this week. Yes, a few late nights, but you're busy. It's going to happen. But you've still felt very good. Training still be good. Mood's good. So I wouldn't really stress it. I know you've put here, sleep time, chill out, and what you can improve on. Great. If you notice in those times have slipped a little bit, try working on them next week. Again, if you're still going to be a little bit busier, don't stress out about it. Don't beat yourself up. You're going to have weeks where some things slip. But if you're aware of it, when normality returns and you've got a bit more ability to focus on that and rein them back in, then you can do. Again, steps very high this week, a little bit higher than previous week. Again, probably because you've been busier. And again, it's just kind of almost gives another reason as to why taking calories up, specifically this week and weeks where you are going to be busier, would be advantageous, right? Because last thing we want when we're trying to add muscle mass is for calories or our energy balance to like drop, really, right? Because we want to be again in that slight surplus. So if our expenditure for whatever reason does increase, sort of away from, let's say, the weight training point of view, then we probably do want to add a little bit more food, because we want to make sure recovery is still going to be as good. We want to make sure training performance is still going to be as good. We want to make sure we're still going to be in that slight surplus, right? And then training's been very, very good, right? Training's been good. You felt really strong, energetic, really good, happy with it. Everything's in a good place. Everything is in a really good place. So we're doing very, very well. I'm just wanting to push the food a little bit just to make sure we're in this slight surplus, just to be in the optimal position for adding muscle mass. But things are very, very good. Don't get me wrong. And you should be very proud and happy of how you're doing. You're making small progressions, which is great. One thing I want you to keep an eye on now and be aware of and let me know is if things start stalling, right? Movements, exercises, progressions on those will start stalling eventually, right? It might not happen for a while, but some movements will stall eventually, right? You'll maybe hit the same reps 1 week or 2 weeks in a row. You might struggle to progress things. When that starts happening, just let me know what exercise is stalling or different ones, just to keep me aware, because that's when we might want to, depending on how many exercises, look at rotating or look at taking a deload or whatnot. So just keep me on sort of in the loop on any movements that start stalling or we're struggling to progress, okay? And again, if that happens, that's normal. It's not like if things do start stalling, you're doing anything wrong. It's normal. Things will eventually. So just keep me in the loop on that from week to week. Please give me a brief explanation of biomechanics. I understand everybody has different biomechanics. Does this mean some people perform exercises better than others? Okay, so biomechanics is a very, very, very complicated aspect. Biomechanics play a part in which movements might be better for others. So, for example, a good example of this is squats, because people think you need to squat to get, to train legs or whatever. Some people might be able to squat very well. Some people might not be able to squat very well. If people have got longer limbs, they might find squatting difficult. Like for me, I've got quite long limbs. I find squatting just uncomfortable. I just don't like it, so I don't do it, right? So that becomes down to my biomechanics. Someone who's got shorter limbs might find squatting very easy for them. It comes naturally. Also depending on the biomechanics, how people's built, someone who squats might have a squat that's more focused towards training their quads. Someone else might have one more focused towards training their glutes, right? So biomechanics do play a part in, I would say, what exercises someone chooses, because that's going to impact how well they perform that movement, right? It also comes into play of how you set up certain movements. If someone's again got longer arms, say on like a row, they're probably going to want that starting position further away so they can get full range and a good stretch. Someone on like a pull down might have a wider what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like shoulder width. So therefore, when they grab the bar or when they're pulling in, it might look different to someone else who can pull a lot more narrow, right? There's loads of different things that come into play, and it's basically how someone is built will impact what exercise you choose and how that movement is performed, right? That comes down to me, again, watching your videos, looking how you perform things, and then changing things. But it can get very, very complicated. But I can try my best to start explaining it as time goes on if you want. Okay, yeah, but hopefully that all made sense. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to run out of time. But again, with the calories, it's just getting our head around it, thought process. And I completely understand, because when I started trying to add muscle mass, I was in the same position where I was very lean for like my whole life, and adding body fat for me was a challenge, and I had to get my head around it, and I had to sort of accept it, and accept myself for when I added body fat, right? But at the same time, it almost is just how it is. Any questions on it, do let me know. Have a great weekend. Okay.